Good morning, I'm Martha and I'm going to be starting the training. My colleague Tamika will be taking over about halfway through. Thank you for coming the long way to your computers on this snowy day. And welcome to the DOB Now Build December 2020 release, Design Professional and Filing Representative Training. In addition to the Q&A feature, which Mark already talked about, I would like to let you know that we're going to be doing some survey questions or polls as we go. And in fact, I'm going to start the first one now. Please tell me, based on your experience, have you ever used DOB Now and to what extent? We're going to give 45 seconds to answer each question, so please go ahead and do that. And while we're waiting for you to answer, I want to go over what we're covering in this session. We're starting with ground rules, most of which Mark already covered with you, but please do make sure that you participate, ask your questions. We'll talk about learning objectives. We're going to do a quick overview of the features and benefits of DOB Now. I should note that if you downloaded a copy of this training material, of this PowerPoint deck, there is a section in there on how to register for e-filing. We are not going to cover that during the live session, but if you have any questions about that, please feel free to ask it in the Q&A. And we will keep the Q&A open a little bit after the live training is finished. So we'll talk about the DOB Now overview. We then will get into the December 2020 release and how the industry process is changing. Oh, it looks like most folks use DOB Now regularly. Fantastic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go quickly through the overview of DOB Now, because it'll be a review for you. And then at the end of the training, we'll give you some materials to help you back on the job, and then there's time for questions and answers. So at the end of this session, you're going to be able to understand the modules, features, and benefits included in DOB Now, to access and navigate the DOB Now Build industry portal, to correctly choose appropriate work type or work types for your job filings, to identify key roles and responsibilities. You'll know how to submit initial job filings, how to complete all required concrete documentation and technical reports. There's some updates to that. You'll know how to file corrections, post-approval amendments, and civil penalties review requests, L2. How to submit subsequent job filings and how to request letters of completion. So one other thing I want to mention in terms of best practices, you're going to be receiving a survey via email after this training to see how it went. And please do send those back. We really do take your feedback seriously, and we want to make these trainings as valuable as possible for you. So since most folks seem to be familiar with DOB Now, I'm going to go quickly through this section, but basically it's a web-based portal to do the things that you used to have to do in paper. There are 6 modules within DOB Now. Today we're focusing on DOB Now Build, which is where you create and submit job filings for all job types and work types that are available. Pull and renew permits, request AHVs, request LOC, schedule appointments, and resolve objections. DOB Now Licensing has license filings for welders, journeymen, and gas work qualification. And our goal is, of course, to expand that to all of the types of licenses that DOB Now offers, that DOB offers through DOB Now. In DOB Now Inspections, you can request inspections and view results. In DOB Now Safety, it includes submitting safety compliance filings for boilers, elevators, facades. You can submit a rescission request for COVID-19 safety guidance stop work orders. You can also search and submit violation payments and waivers for boilers and elevators. The biz options allows you to do some transactions for items that were found in biz, for jobs that were created in the old system. You can have certificate of correction review requests, civil penalty review requests. Again, this is specifically for jobs that were filed in biz. License renewal applications and boiler sign-off requests. And then there's the essential construction, which is where you can find weekly safety inspection reports. When you go to log in, as I'm sure most of you have seen, there's two portals. There's the public portal, which anyone can access. You do not need a login for. And then there's the industry portal, which is only for e-filing registered users. In general, you'll hear this as I go, I think that DOB Now Build and DOB in general is great. You can submit a job filing online. You can get real-time access to job filing information any time of day or night. There's greater transparency of the filing process because you can follow your job filings as they move through the process. And ideally, it's faster processing time. So DOB Now Build has key stakeholders. This session is designed for the applicants of record for initial or subsequent job filings, which would be registered architects, professional engineers, and licensees. Other stakeholders include property owners, job filing representatives, licensees, inspectors for both special inspections and progress inspections, and site safety people. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a sec. So just to make sure we're all using the same vocabulary, some key terms. On the left, you'll see the action panel. On the top, you see action buttons, and then there's the action drop-down. Let me show you this in the live system. So I'm going to go ahead and log into DOB Now Build. And this is the landing page. I'm going to hover over DOB Now Build and choose Alterations. Now, since a lot of you are using DOB Now regularly, there are some changes to how this looks. You'll notice that many of the action buttons, if you hover over them, you will see options or things that you can choose to do rather than having one button for each option. The job filings menu has changed a little bit as well. You can still filter your jobs either here or you can filter by any of the columns here. But we have added something that was asked for in our feedback sessions. If you go over here to the action button on the right, the 3 lines, you can export your data to Excel. And just click it once and it will export to Excel. And you'll see there's a lot of information available here. You also can choose what will appear on your dashboard, which columns. So for example, if I decided that I didn't want to see job type filing in the filings, I click that and the column goes away. You can customize your view. This is something that, like I said, was added in response to feedback from our users. The action panel, if you hover over it, you'll see 3 buttons. This one takes you back to the main landing page. This one takes you to back to the job filings dashboard. And this one, when you click on it, opens up a list of other dashboards. So you can look just at the information you want to see. For example, if you were dealing with work permits, you could look just at the work permits that you are associated with. Over here, you'll see that you see every filing you are associated with, the main job filings dashboard. We have also updated the search. It used to be you could only search by job number, but we have added a search by bin option. We talked about the action panel and how it opens up a list of dashboards. We also talked about the action menu on the right. I showed you how to export data as Excel and how to choose which columns to view. Now, if you are sorting your data by using either the filter dropdown or putting information in the columns, you can query your filters here as well. Once you go into a job filing, again, this is vocabulary. I want to make sure we're talking the same language. Up on the top, you'll see the status bar that shows you where your job filing is in the process. And you'll note that you can see some of the stages that were not clear in the older style of filing jobs. You can see that this particular job filing is currently pending ProfCert QA assignment. And once it has been assigned, you'll see that it is at ProfCert QA review. Over here on the left, we have the tabs. Each of them opens up one or more sections in the main area here. Sections, when you first open them, are closed. You just see the blue bar. If you click on the header bar, as it's called, it will open up the section below it. And then you have fields where data can be entered. If the field is white, you can enter data. If the field is gray, then the information will be auto-completed or auto-populated once you save your file. You can also tell which fields are required by looking for this red asterisk here. There's a lot more information available online. You can get tip sheets, guides, FAQs, and you can get it either by going to the DOB Now login page or by going to the page where you signed up for this class. So let's talk about what's coming in this release. We're introducing 5 new work types to DOB Now Build: general construction, earthwork, foundation, protection and mechanical methods, and supportive excavation. We're also introducing the ability to request composite permits through DOB Now Build. If you are involved with permit requesting, please sign up for one of our training sessions that is designed for contractors. That covers permit requests. There are some enhancements to concrete, and I will be covering that today. And then there are some new functionalities. You can file a tenant protection plan or a site safety plan through DOB Now Build, and you will be able to withdraw or supersede participants in your job filing. We are offering separate trainings for those functionalities. There will be one training that covers tenant protection plans and site safety plans, and a second training specifically on withdrawal and superseding. Please do sign up for those classes if that's information you need. You can sign up the same place that you signed up for this class. But we're not done yet. In early 2021, we're having another release, and there will be training offered, so keep an eye peeled. We're going to introduce 2 new job types: alteration affecting occupancy, what we used to call Alt-1 jobs, and new buildings. Both of those will be able to be filed in DOB Now Build. We're introducing a new term. The Schedule A is being renamed to the Schedule of Occupancy, and that can be requested through DOB Now Build. You'll also be able to request your certificate of occupancy through the system and request temporary bins. Now, for the rest of this training, we're focusing on the December 2020 release. So let's talk a little bit about the release and what's coming. Our filing structure. For one bin, your initial alteration filing job, you can file today and get permits for the 2 work types. 3 days after the job filing is approved, you may realize, hey, you know what? I need to make a change. So you can file a post-approval amendment. 2 weeks later, you need another job filing. This one would be supportive excavation. A month later, you can do a second subsequent job filing for protection mechanical methods. This is all based on the same thing. One bin can have multiple jobs, and one job can have multiple work types. So let's talk about work types. We currently have 14 work types, and we are adding 5 in this release. All 5 of these were found under Other on the paper PW1. So I have a question for you. Of these 5 new work types, how many does your company handle? Please submit your answers. All right. Now let's talk about combined filings. You can combine more than one work type on a job filing, as I said before. There are two combined filing options that currently exist in DOB Now Build. You can file plumbing, sprinkler, and standpipe in any combination. And you can file sidewalk shed, supported scaffold, and fence in any combination. The advantage of combined filings is that they will have one applicant of record and will trigger only one instance of a given TR inspection. For example, there will be only one TR final for all of the work types on the filing. Great advantage. We're introducing some new additional work type combinations. Of the new work types, here's the ones that can be combined. First of all, there's the ones that are combined with general construction. In order to combine these four work types, foundation, earthwork, structural, mechanical systems, you must include general construction. You cannot do a combined filing of these four, or most subsets of them, without including general construction. We're also offering two new combined filings that do not include general construction. You can file for supportive excavation and protection and mechanical methods together, and you can file foundation and earthworks together. And these new work types can also be filed individually. You're not required to combine them. We talked about the benefits of combined filing, but the ones that are listed on this page have an additional benefit. That is that these combinations on this page can have composite permits if the contractor is the same. That would be one permit covering all the work types on the job. Existing work types that can be combined filed, the ones on the previous slide, will not allow for composite permits. So we'll get a lot more into that in the contractor training if you attend that. What you'll do is you'll select your work types by clicking the appropriate checkboxes, and I'll show this to you in a minute. And what you'll see is when you click something, it restricts what else you can choose. So if I were to choose, for example, general construction, then I would only be able to add the four additional types that can be combined filed with general construction. This illustrates something that I really like about DOB Now in general, DOB Now Build in specific, which is that the system helps you file things correctly. It will keep you from combining work types that cannot be combined. So let's talk about these 5 new work types. General construction is the first one. And with the current release, only GC alteration jobs can be submitted in DOB Now Build. And GC can be filed in combination with other work types or as a standalone. The subcategories for GC are construction, facade, chimney, and enlargement. And you can choose one or more of them. Foundation work type is the next one, and that includes 5 different subcategories: shallow, deep, underpinning, retaining walls, and tiebacks and anchors. One thing that is important to know is if you choose underpinning, underpinning cannot be combined with anything. It cannot be combined with other subcategories, but in addition, underpinning cannot be combined with other work types. So it must be filed by itself. If you have already chosen to include other work types, you will not be able to select underpinning as your subcategory in foundation. Earthworks. One of the exciting features of the new release is that you're no longer going to have to call DOB for your earthwork notification. There is, in fact, a notification function that is built into DOB Now. That is also covered during the contractor training if you want to know how to do that. You're going to need to specify your enlargement type and then choose your subcategories. There are 4 subcategories for earthworks: landscape, soil improvement, site work, and excavation. The supportive excavation work type is also about excavations, much like earthworks, but It has a lot more subcategories. You will see that there are 10 subcategories here. I'm not going to read them all out. You can read just as well as I can. Excuse me, 8 subcategories. I increased the number in looking at it. So there are 8 subcategories for supportive excavation. Protection mechanical methods is also available in this release. It covers 6 subcategories: cocoons, chutes, roof protection, mechanical demolition equipment, hoisting equipment, and roof overhead protection and platforms. Now, any of these new work types may trigger any of the following. They may trigger the PGL1 requirement. That's your general liability. You may trigger a site safety plan. It may trigger a tenant protection plan. One thing to note, if a site safety plan or tenant protection plan is required, you are not going to be able to file your PW2 with the initial ProCert filing. The permit can only be granted after the site safety plan or tenant protection plan has been approved. For general construction filings, you're going to need to specify if you want the TR final or DOB sign-off inspection. And the technical reports will be triggered by criteria that are defined on the job filing, how you answer other questions. And any of these TRs may be required depending on how you answer the questions about the work you're doing. There's going to be questions you haven't seen before that are asked in DOB Now Build. It's things like, will you need dewatering for this job filing? Are there adjacent historic structures within 50 feet of the project lot lines? This is all information that wasn't included in the paper PW1, but will be included in this job file. So let's talk about the job filing process. I'm going to go through the process and then we're going to go and try it. So you start by logging in. You're going to hover over DOB Now Build and select Alteration. In order to start a new job filing, you press the plus job filing action button. You'll select your work types. Then you enter your PW1 information, enter your zoning information, enter your cost affidavit, give details about the technical reports, upload required documents. You'll need to pay your fee, and then you can click File. Now, one of the features that has been asked for a lot, and an exciting new thing about the current release, is for the Preview to File button, the one that actually checks if everything has been submitted correctly. In this new release, anyone can press that button and see if everything has been filled out correctly. Only the applicant of record will actually be able to file, but anyone can click the Preview to File button. And once you file your application, it'll be reviewed by DOB through either standard plan review or ProCert QA review. And then you'll be approved, at which point you can request your work permit. So let's try this in our live system. I did skip a step, so I'm going to go back to it. You log in, you need to hover over DOB Now Build and choose Alterations, and you will get to your main job filings dashboard. We're going to click on Job Filing. Now, remember how I told you that selecting general construction restricts what else you can select? You'll see that I can only select the things that are allowed to go with general construction. So let's select a couple of those. I press Submit, and it takes me straight into my job filing. I need to enter location information, so we're going to start with that. I will show you how that looks. Excuse me, I want to make sure that I'm entering the correct information. We're going to file our job filing for 180 Riverside Boulevard in Manhattan. I need to enter the block and lot number. And you'll notice I cannot enter the BIN, the community board, or the zip code. Won't let me click on them. There has been an update to the work on floors. You used to be restricted to only 5 floors. Now you can specify as many floors as you're working on. You can also select which work types go to which floors. When you get to the stakeholders section, you will need to enter your applicant information. You do that by putting in the email. Now, it's important when this blue box pops up under the email, you must click on it because that's what fills in the rest of the information. I now need to specify my license type and my business name. You put in your owner information. Again, make sure you click on the email that pops up in blue and your owner type. You can also enter any information about the filing representative if there is one. You must specify the filing review type and specify whether this is new work or legalization. Now, at this point, I can click Save. It will note that I cannot change the location information once I have saved this. As soon as I click Save, you will see, once this finishes loading, it assigns me a job filing number and my status bar updates with the steps of the status that are appropriate to this job filing. And do you remember how I told you that you can choose for general construction whether you want to submit a TR final or whether you want a DOB performed final inspection? That also shows up right here. You'll then enter your subcategories. And choose what is appropriate. Notice it's not letting me choose underpinning because that has to be on its own. Now, it's a good idea to save when you're done entering information. While that saves, let's go back to our PowerPoint and we'll go through this. So we selected job filing, chose our work types, and we then started filling out the data entry process. We had to choose the filing review type. And we talked about this, but I want to talk about this in a little bit more detail. You can, if you are filing Prof Cert, submit a work permit with your initial job filing, unless the work type is one that may trigger a site safety plan. That includes general construction, structural, foundation, supportive excavation, or earthworks. Your choice of review type is also affected by Local Law 158 of 2017, which we'll talk about in a moment. You're then going to navigate through your PW1, and let's look at the categories in the live system. We already saw the location information, the stakeholders, the filing review type, work type filing includes, which is where you choose subcategories. There's additional information that you need to enter an estimated job cost. You can also specify if this job filing is related to other job filings, either in BIS or in DOB Now. There's a long series of questions asked about additional considerations, limitations, or restrictions. And you'll note that it specifies which ones are required. And if I were to try to, for example, preview to file, which again, anyone can do, it would tell me what's wrong here. So I'm going to save so all of my red exclamation marks go away. So you need to fill out all this information. Like I said, it will only ask the questions that are relevant to your job filing. You'll need to indicate your NYCECC compliance. Enter your job description. This is the job description that will be printed on the work permit. There's site characteristics, some of which will have been automatically filled out based on the location information. Asbestos abatement compliance, and then there's the comments field. I should note the comments field is not required at this point, although you can certainly enter additional comments. But the comments field will be required for PAAs. You then go to your zoning information, and it will ask the questions that are relevant to your job filing. We've talked about the updates to the work on floor. In order to save, at minimum, you have to fill out the address and the stakeholders as well as the review type. You will get this address confirmation once you save. We talked about the job filing number briefly, but let's go into a little bit more detail on it. So the first part of the job filing number is a letter, and the letter represents the borough. There's then the job filing number, which is a 9-digit number. And I'm sorry, an 8-digit number. Got to make sure that I have the correct number of digits. There is also a suffix to the job filing that indicates what type of job filing it is. The initial job filing will always be I-1. Subsequent job filings will start with S1 and then go to S2, S3, and so on. Post-approval amendments will start with P1 and then go to P2, P3, etc. And when you're ready to file for a work permit, there will be a suffix at the end, which indicates details about the work type. We go into the work permit numbering in more detail in the contractor training session. We talked about the status bar, and the status bar will show you the steps for the job filing review type and for the particular job that you have chosen. So this is a QA one. This one is standard plan. You'll notice standard plan has some more steps before approval. It will also expand to show you additional information depending on what is required. So let's talk about Local Law 158 of 2017. It applies to new job filings for bins that had a work without permit violation within the previous year. Those job filings need to go through a plan examiner review to determine if they can be filed through ProfCert. With a few exceptions, your application to file ProfCert will be approved if you as the applicant qualify for one of the waiver requests or work without permit waiver reasons that are listed on an L2 form. When you start a job filing for a location that has a work without permit violation within the last year, you will see a warning at 3 different points in the process. The first point, and let me show this to you. We're going to go back to our dashboard. And I'm going to search by address this time. 13 Monroe Street. When you attempt to save a job filing on which there is a work without permit violation, you will get a warning letting you know that there is an extra review. And you will see in the status bar that there are 2 extra steps to the review because there is a CPE ACP review and then a plan examiner review to determine if you can file this job filing ProfCert. The same warning is going to appear when you save the job filing, when you submit payment, and when the job filing is submitted for approval. It's important to note that if you submit your application and you are not approved to proceed as ProfCert, you cannot change your application to standard plan. You will need to scrap it and create a brand new application that is created as standard plan. And we talked about how it shows up on the status bar with the additional plan examiner steps. So the plan examiners for Local Law 158 of 2017 have two options. They can approve the job filing for Prof Cert review, in which case it moves forward, or they can deny it, in which case no further action can be taken on that job filing. There is no resubmission process. You need to submit a brand new job filing with standard plan review. But either way, you're going to receive an email notification, both the applicant will and the owner, with the status and outcome of the review. In general, you're going to receive email notifications every time the status is updated. This is going to help with transparency, so you will not even need to log in, although of course you can, to know what the status of your job filing is. For example, this is a job filing where it has been submitted and is awaiting assignment to a plan examiner. You'll get that automated message. The email notifications are going to come from DOB Now do not reply at buildings.nyc.gov. So please make sure that that email address is whitelisted and it doesn't go to your spam filter. Let's go to the zoning tab. There's a lot of information in here, but the system really will guide you through what you need to enter. There's some additional questions that are asked and some additional information that will be auto-populated. Now, one thing that will show up here and will also show up on your work permit is the total number of dwelling units, as well as the total number of dwelling units that will be occupied during work. You'll need to specify which planning regulations are associated with the filing, as well as the occupancy, construction, and multiple dwelling classifications. You also need to note the building type. This is all stuff that was on the paper PW1, so it should not be new to you. You'll need to enter the number of dwelling units for both the existing and proposed structure. The next tab or tabs are scope of work, and most work types are going to show up under scope of work as tabs. The two exceptions are general construction and protection of mechanical methods. Those do not show up under scope of work. Now, in the scope of work section, for structural, foundation, earthworks, and supportive excavation, there is a question asked about material. If you choose concrete as a material that is included in your scope of work, then there will be some additional requirements for concrete. We'll talk about that in just a moment. The questions that are asked under scope of work depend on the work type you've chosen. You will need to fill out a cost affidavit, a PW3. If you do not need to fill it out, it won't show up. It will only show up if it's required. But if it is required, it is important to note that the total cost from your cost affidavits must be the same as the estimated cost listed on the PW1. If it is not the same, you're not going to be able to submit your job filing. You will get an error. When you get into the special inspection categories and the progress inspection categories, we have a new feature that I think you're going to like, which allows you to update multiple categories. So for example, if you had the same special inspector for all three of these special inspection categories, you could update them all at once. Choose this, enter the same person's information and enter the DPL for all three of them at the same time. Now, anyone who is identified as a special inspector or a progress inspector is going to need to log into DOB Now Build, navigate to the tab for technical reports, for their special inspections or progress inspections, and electronically sign the identification of responsibilities. And they're the ones that actually have to upload their DPL1. They can do it for multiples at once. Now let me show you quickly what that looks like. So I go to technical report here. There's currently nothing showing up. But if I felt that there were ones that were needed, I could add them. And then you could enter them by clicking on the View Edit button and add the special inspection applicant's details. You also need to upload required and additional supporting documents. Well, all required documents will show up under required documents, and you can then add additional supporting documents if you so choose. You can upload documents in PDF or JPEG format, and the file names cannot contain special characters, and the files cannot be larger than 250 megabytes. You do it by clicking on the upload button here. If you need to add additional supporting documents, you can do that by clicking plus add new document. And there will be a list of types of documents here. And you choose the relevant one. Now, only anyone who's associated with the job filing can upload documents here. But you will need to make sure that all required documents are uploaded at the proper time. They may be needed prior to approval, in which case they must be uploaded essentially right away. There may be also documents that are needed prior to permit being issued. Those do not need to be uploaded before approval if you don't have them yet. There may be documents that are required before you can request the LOC. It will tell you when your documents are required. And then we get to statements and signatures. Both the applicant of record and the owner will need to sign into DOB Now Build and acknowledge by clicking the checkbox that they attest that the information entered, documents uploaded, and payments are correct on the job file. There is an additional question that will be asked of the owner that is really important to know about. There is a question for the owner asking if there will be residential units occupied during work. Now, it's not the owner that has to fill it out. It's simply in the owner section. Anyone can enter the data. If there are going to be residential units occupied during your work, a tenant protection plan must be filed. Again, this is not new. It's just new to DOB Now Build. We talked about choosing the DOB Perform Final Inspection or TR Final. Now let's talk briefly about fees. You have to pay your fees before the job filing can be submitted. But we have added a notification in your pop-up for paying the fees, which is payment is not the last step. It's important to remember you need to pay, and only after you pay can you file your job filing, but you still need to go in and click the preview to file and then click the file button. I'm not going to go into how to make the payment because that hasn't changed. You will get confirmation sent to you via email. Let's talk a little bit about concrete because I told you there are some enhancements, but before I do, I have a quick poll for you. Have you experienced filing structural work types in DOB Now Build that included concrete? Please answer yes or no. And while people are answering that, I'm going to start talking about concrete. So concrete can be a part of these work types: structural, foundation, earthworks, and supportive excavation. Only structural is part of the current DOB Now Build world. So that's the only way that you would have experienced filing concrete information. Concrete is not completely new to DOB Now Build, but there are enhancements. I'm going to go through the entire process, but I'll point out which parts are enhancements. So each of these work types, structural, foundation, earthworks, and supportive excavation, will appear as a tab under the scope of work if they are part of the job file. And as part of that tab, there's a question asked: what materials will be used? Concrete is one of the options. And if you choose concrete, then the concrete requirements come into play. One important thing to note for SOE job filings, concrete only applies when you choose tangent/secant piles in the subcategory. If concrete is identified as a material being used, and this is a concrete tab will appear under scope of work, and that will have questions regarding concrete use. This used to show up in the scope of work for the work type, for structural. The responses to the questions determine if the concrete technical reports should be submitted. There are two technical reports that may be required. Those are the TR2 for concrete sampling and testing, and the TR3 for concrete design mix. So you can currently use DOB Now Build to file concrete technical reports for structural job filings. In addition, in the current system, the TR2 can be waived, but not the TR3. Job filings for foundations, earthworks, and supportive excavation are currently filed in paper format at the borough offices. And you are currently submitting technical reports for concrete in paper. So this is all moving to DOB Now Build. There is also an update to what you must enter. You now have the ability to waive both the TR2 and the TR3, or only the TR2 on the concrete scope of work tab, and I'll get into how that works. Structural job filings are going to have that same ability. So before I get into how to file concrete, let's talk about the stakeholders. So there's 3 different roles that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the director of the licensed concrete testing lab. We'll talk about the concrete producer and the concrete quality manager. The director of the licensed testing lab. Now, here's something important to understand. There are 2 different labs which you may need. If you are filing both the TR2 and the TR3, you need a different concrete lab for each. The concrete lab that takes ownership of the TR2 must be different from the concrete lab on the TR3. And the director of the licensed testing lab will need to complete statements, signatures, and upload required documents. The concrete producer also has a role in both the TR2 and the TR3, and we'll go into that. Now, in the TR3 only, instead of the director of the licensed testing lab, you can have a quality manager who will complete the TR3 portion for the lab. So the roles. Before plan approval, you don't need to identify any of these people. It's just the applicant and owner of record. However, before you request your permit, you need to identify the 2 concrete testing labs, A and B, the concrete producer. And the applicant of record is the one that goes in and identifies those folks. Those folks will then potentially need to go in and take action. We'll talk about that. And then before sign off, the concrete testing lab for the TR2 and the concrete producer have steps to take before the applicant of record requests the letter of completion. So let's look at how this is actually handled. In the scope of work tab, there's going to be a question about materials being included. If you choose concrete, concrete comes up. There may be an additional question for foundation job filings in particular. If concrete is selected, it asks an additional question. Is the proposed foundation for a tower crane? The answer to that doesn't affect which technical reports are required for concrete. The question is worded slightly differently for structural job filings. But once you select concrete as material, you get a concrete tab in the scope of work. Now, in the concrete tab, it first asks one question. Is the proposed total concrete placement on a given project, including associated filings, less than 50 cubic yards? If the answer is no, that it's 50 cubic yards or more, then it doesn't ask any further questions because you will need both the TR2 and the TR3. Neither one can be waived. But if it's less than 50 cubic yards, you may be able to waive either the TR2 and TR3 or just the TR2. So you get two more questions. The next question, the second question, asks, are you proportioning your concrete without field experience or trial mixtures? If you answer yes, there's no more questions and you will not need to enter the TR2 or the TR3. They will both be removed. If you answer no to the second question, you'll get a third question that you need to answer, which is, would you like to waive the requirement for testing of fresh concrete sampling, TR2? If you say yes, then you will not be required to fill out the TR2, but the TR3 will still show up. If you say no, both the TR2 and the TR3 will show up. I would like to note that you may have two additional questions. It comes specifically if you choose concrete as material and the proposed occupancy classification and zoning is R3 and the job plan includes the foundation work type. If these two questions come up, you must answer them, but the answer to the questions does not affect which technical reports are required. So let's look at how this looks in DOB Now bill. So I'm going to search for 14 Calcagno Court. So if we go into the scope of work, just to show this to you, the material that was being included was concrete. There were some additional questions there. So we now get the concrete tab. You then need to answer these questions. These questions currently were answered so that both the TR2 and the TR3 show up. Now let me show you what happens if you choose something different. So this job filing, if I go into the scope of work, I choose concrete, and I say no, it is not. Excuse me, I was going to show you what happened when you made different options. If you say yes, it is less than 50 cubic yards. And we decide that we're going to proportion our concrete without field experience or trial mixtures, and then I save, nothing is going to change in technical reports because the TR2 and the TR3 are waived. If I change this to no, and choose no for this and save, then the TR2 shows up in technical reports. The TR3 does not show up at this point. The TR3 only shows up after approval. But the TR2, in the TR2, the only parts that are required before approval are specifically the design applicant and the building owner must sign in and attest that they are going to follow the requirements for concrete and hire testing labs. They don't have to have hired the testing lab at this point. They just need to say they will be doing it. So let me go back to my slideshow. This is the applicant and owner need to attest. Now, before we get into what happens after the job filing is approved, I want to note that there is a fee. This is new to DOB Now build, but it's not new. There's a concrete fee if concrete is being used on a foundation work type. It's a flat fee of $390 and must be paid before the job filing is submitted. The fee is waived for fee exempt owners. So before plan approval, before you submit your job filing, you need to complete the concrete tab in the scope of work, generate the TR2 if it's appropriate, and complete your statements and signatures, including the statements and signatures in the TR2 tab. And this is only the applicant of record and the owner. Now, once your job filing is approved and there's more information that needs to be filled out before permit submission. This is the point at which you will have to hire concrete testing labs. So in the TR2, if you have it, you will have to specify the concrete testing lab information, identify the director of the concrete testing lab for the TR2. And that person then needs to log in and attest to their role. That's all that's needed on the TR2 before you request your permit. There is a way to track your progress, as you can see here. Some of the stages will take place after the permit is granted. In addition, once the job filing is approved, if you have a TR3, it's going to appear under technical reports. You're going to need to add at least one concrete design mix. Now, there's a maximum of 20 mixes that can be added, but at least one needs to be added. And let's look at what happens when you do that. So in the TR2, at this point, we're at approved status, but we haven't submitted it for a permit. In the TR2, you need to identify the concrete testing lab. And the director of that concrete testing lab needs to sign in and attest. In the TR3, you need to add a concrete design mix. And when you do that, you need to enter the information for the testing lab director or quality manager for this concrete lab. Remember, this has to be a different concrete lab than the one in the TR2. You need to enter the information of who you hired. You also need to enter the information for the concrete producer. Now, once that is done, here's what's going to happen. The concrete testing lab director or quality manager is going to log in. And the first thing they need to do is to enter the strength requirements and design. So let me log in as if I were that concrete testing lab. And show you what we need to do. So again, we're in the TR3. And I am the representative of the concrete testing lab. So I'm going to go in. That's my information in there. Great. Now, there's a new option under strength requirements and design. I can add a requirement. So this is the details. I need to enter the details of the first mix that is required. And there's a lot of details here, as you can see. So let me show you this in slideshow. I need to enter details about how I determined the proportions that is required for the concrete, when the trial mixture was performed, the required strength, the specified strength, and the specified test age. And then I need all of these details on cementitious, fine aggregate, coarse aggregate, so on and so forth. All of that needs to be filled out. In addition, as the representative of the concrete testing lab, I need to upload a mix document with all of that information. And then I need to complete the statements and signatures, attest to my duties. The concrete producer also needs to log in, but they, at this point, only have two things they need to do. They need to enter their National Ready Mixed Concrete Association certification expiration date to prove that they're still certified. And they need to attest that they will produce the concrete according to the details in the mix documents. And you can track the details of the mixes in the TR3. Once all the mixes are uploaded and all of that's, both the lab and the concrete producer have it signed, you can request the work permit. Within the work permit, it's going to ask a question about concrete. The question is, does your approved work include 2,000 cubic yards or more of concrete? If the answer is no, there's no further questions. But if the answer is yes, there's two additional pieces of information that need to be filled out. The first is, you need to identify who's going to do the concrete work. Is it the same general contractor who's submitting the work permit, or is it someone else? If it's someone else, a different contractor, you need to enter their information, and that contractor needs to log on to DOB Now Build and sign the permit request. In addition, if your amount of concrete being used is 2,000 cubic yards or more, a concrete safety manager needs to be identified. And the concrete safety manager will also need to sign into DOB Now Build and attest to their duties. So before permit, let's go through this. The concrete testing lab for the TR2 signs in and says, yes, I'm doing that. The director of the concrete testing lab for the TR3 also signs in and takes ownership. They then add up to 20 mixes and complete all of their statements and signatures. The concrete producer also needs to sign in and complete their statements and signatures in the TR3. The applicant of record and the owner, just the applicant of record needs to attest to the TR3. And then once all of that is done, the work permit can be requested. Once the work permit is requested, you do the work. To certify your concrete work, there is information that needs to be done prior to requesting the letter of completion. The lab director for the TR3 can add mixes after the work permit is granted, and they do it through the same process I already showed you. I'll get back to the second bullet point here in just a moment. But the concrete testing lab for the TR2 now needs to do some more work. For each concrete mix that is identified in the TR3, the lab for the TR2 needs to upload a test report, a document about testing it, and to certify their work by signing a certificate of completion. In addition, for each test report that's submitted on the TR2, the concrete producer needs to log in and say that and attest that they delivered their concrete according to the specifications. Then the design applicant needs to go in and certify one of two things. They can certify that the test results are in compliance with the approved documents. So they're saying the test reports in the TR2 comply with the requirements in the TR3. Or they say that the test results are in compliance except as noted in an attached report. So in the attached report, if there's exceptions, they have to upload that attached report. It's called a concrete testing exception report. If there are exceptions, the applicant needs then to resubmit the file. It changes the status to permit entire BC/DBC review. Because if there are exceptions, the filing needs to go to the borough commissioner or deputy borough commissioner. The borough commissioner or deputy borough commissioner looks at the exception report and determines the what can be done on the filing if the applicant can request the LOC, or if some or all of the concrete technical reports need to be changed. So they can approve the filing. Approving the filing is essentially saying these exceptions are not big enough to cause a problem. If they approve the filing status changes back to permit entire, at which point the final TR inspection can be certified, followed by the sign-off process. If it's approved, the TR2 and TR3 cannot be edited anymore. Or they could have objections. If the borough commissioner or deputy borough commissioner has objections, then the TR2 attestations are going to be cleared out. And the applicant will need to do one or both of these things. They may need to upload a new exception report and recertify. Or they may need to upload new mixes in the TR3 and new test results in the TR2 before they recertify. So let's go back a couple of slides. Remember how I told you that there are only 20 mixes, that there are 20 mixes allowed initially? Well, if the borough commissioner or deputy borough commissioner sends the filing back to the applicant because of objections, the mixes can be cleared out and another 20 mixes can be added. So only once the TR2 is certified, either without exceptions or the exception report is approved, can the LOC be requested. So let's look at this process. And this is the straightforward process with no exceptions. After the work is done, Lab A, the lab for the TR2, submits their result of their testing of the mixes. The concrete producer also goes into the TR2 and signs to attest that they produced the concrete in accordance with the requirements. The applicant of record then needs to review and certify the TR2 test results. Once they certify with no exceptions, remember we're taking the easy path here. They then need to verify that the final TR inspection was done, or whatever final inspection was done, and at that point they can request their letter of completion. Now, in a minute I'm going to hand this over to Tamika, but first I have a poll question, and this is important to understand. If you have a TR2 and a TR3, how many concrete testing labs are needed? Please answer this question. And I'm going to pass the presentation over to my colleague, Tamika.
Thank you, Martha. Give me a few minutes while I set up. All right, so hopefully my accent could bring some warmth during this weather for you. I'm going to go slowly so you can understand clearly what I have to present. I'll be taking you through a few additional features and convenient processes of DOB Now after you have submitted the job filing. So you have submitted your job filing. How would you know that you've been approved? Well, you'll be able to tell from your dashboard or from within the job filing by looking at the status bar. It will display as approved. The applicant of record and the owner will receive an email notification notifying them that the job is approved. So let's talk about what happens if you're not approved and the objection process starts. Currently, objections can be resolved in DOB Now with features such as scheduling appointments and making changes. However, we have enhanced the objections features to speed up the resolution process. In the future, if objections are not resolved during the appointment time, the plan examiner can allow continuation of appointment, allowing another appointment to be scheduled without you having to resubmit the filing. Isn't that great? One thing you should also note is some of the appointments can be mandatory. Therefore, you will not be able to resubmit the job filing before the appointment, even if the objection status is set to resolved. So I hope that's convenient for you. You will be able to tell from a couple places if you've received an objection on your dashboard or within the job filing by looking at the status bar. It will display as a red exclamation mark saying objections, and also from the email notification as well. On opening the job filing, a new tab also appears titled Objections or Appointments, and I'll also go through this in the live system just now. I just want to go through the guidelines at first, and then you would see how it works. So you'll click the edit icon to view more details and the resolution options. Click the plus appointment button. Sorry, could everyone just mute? I'm getting some feedback. Thank you. You'll have to click the edit icon to view more details and the resolution options. Click the plus appointment button to schedule an appointment. So on clicking the edit icon, more details and resolution options display. You'll have to click the objection status drop-down list to change from open to resolved. So even if when I do my demo, it's not clear, you could always come back and revisit these slides. It clearly outlines the steps. And if you need to drill down even further, you could visit the step-by-step guides. So once you begin to do the to request the appointment, you'd have to provide the required attendees, appointment date, time, and your meeting intent, and then you'll have to click schedule. The system will prompt you to confirm and displays a success message once submitted. After the objection or appointment is closed, proceed to resign and resubmit the job filing. Or, remember I said there's a new feature, so if the plan examiner allowed the appointment, well, a continuation, you would be able to schedule another appointment right then and there. So just a reminder, you would only be able to resubmit during or after the appointment has ended. So let me just head over to the system so you can see how that works. All right, so I'm back on the dashboard where you would have seen Martha initiate all those job filings she showed you. And I'm going to look for a job filing that I know I received an objection on. All right, so here the status here, it says objections. I'm going to go over to the select action column. Sorry, I'm going to double click to open the job filing. And immediately I can see there's a red exclamation mark in the status bar. Right, and then there's also a notification here saying an appointment is required to resubmit the filing. There's a new tab that appears, which I said. And then I'm going to click on the objection to see the details that was sent by the plan examiner. So I'm just going to scroll down. I'm going to just zoom in once so you can see a little bit clearer. And I use Control+ to do that if you guys want to know that hack. And then here is where you would enter the comments of resolving that appointment. So you could just toggle to resolve. You would enter your comments, right? And then you would then go down to plus appointment in order to schedule an appointment. So the applicant of record is required. You would see the plan examiner who sent the request, your job filing number, You would then select a time and date, and the times available it would be 20-minute increments of the plan examiner's availability. And then your meeting intent. And you would select schedule and confirm. Let's say something came up and you'd like to reschedule. We have a quick cancel button here as well. And then you could select another appointment time. So that's how easy it is to schedule an appointment. Now, back on our PowerPoint, I'm just going to recap again, just so it gels together what I just explained. The plan you would locate the job filing, open it, head to the Objection or Appointments tab, click the Edit button, update the objection status, enter the comments, click the Update button. Once that's done, if applicable, you would click plus appointment if there's a need to have an appointment, select the attendee, date and time, and schedule. Upload documents if you need to, review the filing, make any necessary revisions, and then you would sign and submit once the appointment has closed out or during the appointment. So just a true or false question. The plan examiner can allow continuation of appointment. This will allow another appointment to be scheduled without requiring resubmission of the job filing. I just want to make sure you understand what this new feature is about. And then once that poll has closed, I'm going to move on to corrections. We have a few more seconds. And while I wait for the poll to close, I'm just going to introduce corrections. So there are a few ways to make updates and corrections to your filing. The first is a correction. Okay, and the poll closed. The first is a correction which is allowed after a filing has been submitted, but not assigned to a plan examiner or property administrator. Next is an AI1 form used for small changes to plans after they have been approved. And then we have the PAA, used for changes while the filing is in the approved or permit entire stage. So we'll begin with corrections first, and then I'll take you through the additional type of edits. So if you submit a job filing and then need to change something before it's approved, you're going to use the corrections process. You'll have to be quick. And when I say quick, I mean since it can happen at any time before it's assigned to a plan examiner or a QA administrator, you'll have to act before someone gets to your job filing. I'm just making this clear because somebody asked me like, what do I mean by quick? So additional fees may also apply due to your correction. Ensure to pay those fees before you resubmit. So to initiate the correction, you're going to do it as well from the filing action dropdown. And you'll see me use that column a lot today because once the status is changed throughout the process within DOB Now, you would see a lot of different options on what you can and can't do during these processes. So once you can do a correction, it would show up. If you can't, it would not show up in that dropdown list. So that's to kind of tell how you can know what you can and can't do. So it's straightforward from there. Once you click correction, make the changes you want, and then save and resubmit. And of course, I'll demo as well. The only fields you wouldn't be allowed to change are location, applicant, review type, building type, and the owner. So I'm going to head back into the system so you can see how that looks. So from here, I'm going back to the dashboard. And let's say I did this a half an hour ago, and then I got an update. I'm just going to use the last 4 of my filing. If you didn't know, that's a shortcut as well. You don't have to type in the entire job number. And then I head to my select action and I see correction. I'll confirm, yes, I'd like to make a correction. And the job filing would reopen. And then you would see the notification informing you that a correction is in progress. You must provide comments because you have to let us know what you're changing. So here on my initial filing, I had some details here. I'm just going to say I needed, oops, I wanted, all right. I needed, let's see. I needed to update page job description. Oops. Okay. And then you would click save. And then you would reattest, and not the owner, just the applicant. And then you would resubmit. So it's pretty easy and convenient. So just to recap what we just went through, I located the job filing on the dashboard, selected filing actions, select correction. I made my correction, select save. You'd have to reattest. Now you'd have to pay if you made changes that did reflect a change in the cost. Click resubmit and then file. So let's move up another level to PAA. PAAs are used for specifically updating the scope of work after job filing is approved. You can only have one at a time. The applicant must be the same applicant of the original filing, and the changes or edits being made must be entered in the comments field. So get familiar with that comments box at the bottom of the PW1 filing. Every time you go back into the job filing to do something, you have to update us by entering those details in the comments box. One really nice change that's coming is that you don't have to re-upload documents that are staying the same. It will remain on the job filing. However, if you replace the documents that were in an accepted status will not change to pending. Once the PAA is filed and the documents are in accepted state, they will be unable to be changed unless they're being rejected by DOB. So I know that was probably inconvenient before where you had to replace all the documents, but now once you submit the documents and you're not changing it, it will remain on the job filing. You won't have to change it. You just change the ones that you need to, and then once reviewed, it would go back to accepted. So again, I know the system would guide you, but you're going to go to the select action column, select PAA from the drop-down list, make the changes, upload the documents if you need to, reattest, and then click preview to file in order to submit. The only things you can change when you're doing a PAA are the filing review type, location, work on floors, applicant, owner, and building type. There's a one-time fee of $100 to file, plus whatever costs for the actual changes. Now, I know you may need a refund in some circumstances. So if you do, there is this link I've provided where you can get a refund if the job filing cost lowers. So I have the instructions right below that link as well, so you can keep this slide handy. So just so I could walk through the process quickly, I'm going to head back into the system so you can see what that looks like. So I'm heading back to my dashboard. I'm going to type in the last four. And my job, that's permit entire. I'm going to initiate this PAA. I'm going to click yes. And the job filing displays. Again, once you've made your changes, don't forget to add the comments on the details of why you had to initiate this PAA. You would then hit save. And once you hit save, just like on the other processes I started, then you would get a tracking number, the status bar, and other quick actions. Here you would also get to then update the scope, which is probably the main reason why you had to initiate the PA. So you would then head to this tab and provide the updated scope that you wanted to do. Again, the owner does not have to sign, right? Only the applicant would be required to reattest. If this says $0, then you won't have to pay anything. So once it's disabled, you don't have to be worried about that. And I just want to show you that once everything is signed, you can continue to save and preview to file. So what I just did was locate the job filing on the dashboard, select Initiate PA from the Select Action column. I showed you where you could amend the scope. Then you would head down to the Statements and Signatures tab, and then you would save and submit the PA. So true or false? Any document not replaced will remain on the job filing. True or false? And you have a few seconds to answer that. And then we're going to head on to talk about L2 requests in DOB Now build. All right, so while I wait for the results to come in, I'm going to just introduce L2s. So L2s address work without a permit violation. PW2s or work permits cannot be submitted, and you will need to submit an L2 in order to obtain a permit. If you've got if you have got an unpaid penalty fee, you can't request a work permit or submit a new job filing with Prof Cert review, as we discussed earlier in the LL 158/2017 section. Any of the following stakeholders can initiate and submit an L2. So the owner, applicant of record, licensed PE or RA, any DOB licensee, or a Class 2 filing rep. And yes, I see 84% voted true, and that's correct. You don't have to replace the filings that you're not changing on the job filing during a PE. So I'm going to talk about how it works and discuss some guidelines around these L2s. Once you get the warning, if you attempted to request a permit, head to the Select Action column and click Request L2. The screen will then refresh to display the L2 request form. And again, like I did when I went back into the system would guide you so that you would then complete the applicable fields or the required fields with the red asterisk. and then continue on to the general information tab. So once you're here, you'll have to click Edit to address each violation and request an override or reduction or waiver. Each code will display a description, and some codes may require entering additional information. A code must be entered for each violation. In the Documents section, upload any required or additional supporting documents and then attest in order to submit. Here are a couple of guidelines and exclusions about L2 requests in DOB Now build. You cannot request a PW2 or work permit until the L2 is approved or the fee is paid. Waivers of stop work orders will still be on the paper request process. So those orders are like the stop work order, environmental control board, and waiver requests, both in paper and DOB Now build. So let's take a look at the steps that you will perform. You're going to locate the job filing, and let's say you wanted to initiate that L2. You would click from the drop down, enter the required data, upload the supporting documents, complete the statements and signatures, preview before file, and then submit. Once DOB approves, then you'd be able to go back to that job filing and request the work permit for approval. Subsequent job filings, which is another convenient feature in DOB Now. It's a great way of keeping filings together. So subsequent filings will now even speed up the processing time of your job filings even more. You can now file a subsequent after you file the initial submission. You don't have to wait until the approval. You must initiate the subsequent before the LOC of the initial filing, though. The location information and zoning information carries over from the initial filing, except the parking and loading data. So I know this was a big ask. Almost every past industry session, folks asked why they had to wait until the initial was approved. Now, you don't have to wait. As soon as you send off the initial, you can initiate that subsequent request. And if you remember in the past, it was initiated from the action drop-down, same as doing an initial filing, but with some fields filled out because you're starting another filing, right? You would go to the job filing, and then you would have to select the work type of the new subsequent. So I'm going to just show you that now as well. So I have one here. All right, so you see this one is pending ProfSlip QA assignment. So I just sent it. I'm going to go to my select action column and select subsequent filing. I say yes. And then the system, just like the initial filing, would prompt me to ask what are my work types, and then I would select next. And my filing review type. And the subsequent filing displays for you to enter all of the information for this additional filing. As you see, you could enter new stakeholders and such. And the process is just the same as what Martha would have shown you for an initial job filing. So I have another knowledge check before I move on to LOC. You cannot initiate a subsequent job filing until the initial filing is approved by DOB. True or false? I need to make sure all of the new features are understood. I'm also going to vote with you as well. So while that closes out, in conclusion, let's talk about closing of jobs by requesting LOCs. All right. So once you've completed all the technical reports and the work, of course, you can request the LOC. It will then be readily available in the system. And yes, the answer is false. You do not have to wait until that initial job filing is approved. You can now initiate a subsequent job filing as soon as you send off the initial job filing. I just want to make that clear. For example, as Martha reviewed, concrete TR2s must be fully completed before requesting a letter of completion. This includes concrete mixes, test reports, stakeholders attesting, exception reports attached and approved. You can request the LOC either from on the dashboard or within the filing action column on the job filing. Once the system displays the request, provide comments, save, and submit. Once approved, you can print the LOC from within the job filing, which would be to the top far right on the filing. So I'm just going to head back into the system so you can see how this is done as well. I'm going to head to my dashboard and I have a filing here ending in 7208. So the status is in permit entire. I'm going to head down to request LOC. The notification would pop up, or the window would pop up. You enter comments. I'm just going to put something here off the top of my head. Right? And then you would save after you attest. And then once saved, you'd be able to hit submit on that LOC. Now, if the system tells you that you didn't update the final cost, you would have to head back into the job filing and update the final cost. I'm just going to show you where you could do that. I'm going to copy my number here so you could see where you would update the final cost. It would be within the PW3 tab. So you would hit here. I know this is probably common, so I'll just show you. Because I initiated the LOC already, I'm going to go to my LOC dashboard where I would find the one that I started. And I'm going to try to hit submit again. Hold on, I think I didn't. Hold on, let's head back. I'm heading back in. I'm going to click add. Oh. So I'm just going to make sure. Save. Oops. Okay. I'm going to head back to the LOC dashboard. I hope you get the gist of this, even though I'm trying to just get this one to go through. All right. And then you would see it has been submitted. So at least you get, I got to experience probably what you probably forget to do as well. Request the LOC. All right. So once it's been submitted, you would be then able to go back in and then click print letter of completion from within the job filing. So I just located the job filing, verified the TR. If it didn't have any, it didn't prompt me to do it, but I updated the final cost, requested the LOC, entered comments, signed. Once it was approved, then I would have been able to come back in and print the LOC. So let's wrap up what we covered today. You should now be able to describe DOB Now, know the actions that can be done in DOB Now, and the features and benefits of DOB Now. On behalf of Martha and I, and DOB, we're glad that you stayed till the end of this presentation. I'm just going to go through some good to know helpful resources. On landing on nyc.gov/DOB Now, on the left of where we logged in today is the public portal that you can use to view the status of job filings, property profile details, view or print work permits, search licenses without logging in or using a password. So if you're not using it, I hope you find that that's also convenient to use. To better support you, there's a great deal of information out on the DOB website. From your browser, navigate to nyc.gov/DOBNowInfo. You'd find guides, manuals, presentations, a recording of all these sessions, and more. For inquiries and further assistance, head to nyc.gov/DOBNowHelp to submit any additional inquiries you may have. We've received your feedback previously, and we're continuing to do our best to incorporate the features you've requested. So with that said, you could also look out for a survey that will be emailed to you, and we encourage you to provide your feedback so we can enhance these sessions to better serve you. So in closing, we would also open the floor for questions in the Q&A chat. We are not going to end the session immediately. We're going to stay on here so we could provide some open answers to the questions you would have. Thank you again. I hope my accent wasn't too strong. I'm now going to hand it back over to the host.
Thanks, Martha. Thanks, Tamika. So as Tamika mentioned, we will continue to keep this WebEx running for a few more minutes to answer questions that are appearing in the Q&A. Thank you again, and stay warm.